Let's chat through the sixth section of the Salesforce certification exam, Data and Analytics Management, which is going to take up 14%. We're going to talk through all of the bullet points on the exam guide and dive into several aspects of Salesforce so you feel confident and ready to take this section. Let's jump right into it. First bullet is describe the implications when importing, updating, transferring, mass deleting, and exporting data. So talking about data within Salesforce here. So we want to talk through the data import wizard, the data loader, and also talk about the data export service, as well as what it means to mass delete and mass transfer and how we can walk through that process. The data import wizard is a standard data management tool that lives within Salesforce. We're going to jump into a developer org to show you the data import wizard and what to look out for. Now, before I do that, the magic number when talking about the data import wizard is 50,000. 50,000 records is the max that the data import wizard can handle at one time. So that CSV file cannot be more than 50,000 rows. Again, 50,000. That's the magic number that you'll see on the exam. So if there's a question that asks, what tool do you use if you have 50,003 records, you know that it cannot be the data import wizard. But let's jump in and talk about the different objects that the data import wizard can actually work with. So we're going to go into the setup side of this developer org, and we're going to type in data import wizard under the quick find here. So here we have the data import wizard. I'm going to go to launch wizard here at the bottom. And what's important to note are what objects the data import wizard can work with and which ones are missing. So you can have whatever acronym you want. I like to take it just how it is, ACLSCM, which stands for Accounts, Contacts, Leads, Solutions, and Campaign Members. That's what the data import wizard can use on standard objects, as well as you can also work with custom objects. So another call out that is likely on the exam is you'll have a question and it'll say, which import tool or data management tool can you use with blank object? If the object is not listed here or is not a custom object, you know it cannot be the data import wizard. The biggest call out in my mind are opportunities. Opportunities are often needing to be updated and edited or inserted or deleted, and you do not see that on this list here, meaning you cannot mass edit or remove or insert opportunities with the data import wizard. So let's talk about the actions you can take with the data import wizard. So I'll select accounts and contacts, and you'll see here different actions. You'll see add new records or insert new records, update existing records, update or add new and update existing records, or an upsert. These are the actions that you can take here. This is really the function of most data management tools, and this is what we have here in the data import wizard. For example, if I click in update existing records, you'll notice that you can then match by specific fields dependent on the object. I recommend that you go through each of the objects here and you understand how you can match and how you can tell Salesforce what to do when it receives this new information from the data import wizard. So please walk through this section. And then you see here, once you have understood how you want to update or insert or upsert, what kind of file are you going to use? More often than not, you're going to use that CSV file. And so once you have a CSV file, you're then prompted to map fields from the CSV over into the Salesforce fields. So this is a high-level overview of the data import wizard. Again, important to note, the magic number is shown on the screen here, 50,000. That's the magic number for the data import wizard. And again, understand these standard objects that you can alter with the data import wizard: ACL, SCM, accounts, contacts, leads, solutions, campaign members. And you can move around that acronym however you want, but that's important to know what objects you can alter with the data import wizard. Next up is the data loader. The data loader is a program that doesn't live within Salesforce, but is supported by Salesforce that can also have these similar edits, as well as you're able to delete, hard delete, and export data using the data loader. So you do need to download data loader onto your computer. So if you just do a quick Google of download data loader, it brings you to this Salesforce help article, and you can go straight into here and look to download the most recent version. Now, I do already have a version of data loader on my computer. And so you see here, this is just the simple UI is shown right here. It's this little box here, and this is where you can log into whatever org that you want to do, whether it's a production or a sandbox org. But see here the different actions that you can take. The insert, insert new, update existing, upsert, which you can insert and update, delete, hard delete, and export. This is great. You need to know these additional actions, particularly the delete and the export. So again, if you have a question on the test that says, hey, I need to delete 10,000 records, and maybe trying to trick you with that 10,000 number as it's staying under the 50,000 limit of Data Import Wizard, but Data Import Wizard cannot delete. Only Data Loader can delete. So important to know, again, these functions. Again, I highly recommend that you connect Data Loader to a sandbox or production org and look to import some data or into your system and understand how the mapping works. Now, the limitations on the data loader is it is available for all standard and all custom objects. There's no limitation on objects, just like the Data Import Wizard. Data loader, you can work with any standard or custom object. Instead of that 50,000 limit in Data Import Wizard, Data loader can work with up to 5 million rows. I highly recommend you don't go over that limit. It'd be an exhaustive list if you were working with that. But 5 million is the record count limit for the data loader. Now, a few catch-ups on both the data loader and the Data Import Wizard is, we'll talk about this later on. We talk field validation and validation rules, but there are a few things that can catch up an import. And I want to talk about just 3 here very briefly, is talking about how validation rules can trigger when using a data tool, so it can stop an import or an insert of different data. So validation rules, you have restricted pick lists, which I'll talk later in just a few moments, and required missing fields. Those are very common errors that may block an import or an update. The data export service. Let's talk about the data export service and just look at what it looks like within our developer org. So I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to put in data export. And this is a great service that Salesforce offers that allows you to export your data from Salesforce at any time, as well as schedule these exports as well. And so you're able to export all objects. So you see here, I can really make sure that I include all data across all objects and also include different images, documents, and attachments. So this is a wonderful service that allows you to back up your data for all standard and custom objects. You are also able to export on a schedule here that you're able to do, as you see here, look at the frequency, play around with this. When you do export this data, it'll come to you as an email in a CSV file and different files there. So be familiar, go through this process of exporting the data so you can see what that looks like, you can see that process. There may be questions on the test regarding the frequency of the data export, as well as the ability that you can also export out of the workbench. We don't need to walk through that, but just know that you can potentially export data out of the Salesforce workbench. And so again, this service that allows you to schedule this export from Salesforce into CSV files that you can then back up on your computer. You could back up into your cloud, wherever you would like to do that. Now let's talk about the mass delete and mass transfer ability in Salesforce. Salesforce has the native ability to mass delete records of a certain object or mass transfer ownership of certain objects. So we're going to go into the mass delete first. And this is where we have here the mass delete records. Now this is limited to several objects here that you see this list here. Again, accounts, leads, activities, contacts, cases, solutions, products, and reports. And reports, you can only delete reports that are a part of public folders and they are not being used on dashboards or referenced elsewhere. But the rest, these are objects that you're able to delete in mass quantity out of Salesforce. So let's walk through this, and I want to show a few things that may show up on the test. So we'll go to mass delete accounts. This process will look the same for all objects there. So here on the mass delete records for the account, I want to set the criteria up to have Salesforce go and look and query for the list of records that I want to potentially delete. So this is where I can set the criteria based off of field and different logic and value for those fields to search for that subset of accounts. So in this case, I'll make this very simple. I will say that the account name, we'll say that it contains an A, just to pull a couple here. So I'll hit search here, and it's now going to pull all accounts that contain an A. And so what's great here is that you can select individually or mass select the entire list and look to delete. Now what's important are these different options that you have here. For example, you can choose to delete accounts with closed won opportunities. Because if not, if an account has a closed won opportunity, the account will not be deleted as it shows here. As well as you can look at deleting accounts with opportunities owned by someone else, as well as you can permanently delete. And so we'll talk about the recycle bin a little bit, but understand the different options that you have here in the mass delete. And so great opportunity for you to go through different criteria and matching and understanding what query or subset of records you want to look at deleting, and then go through the process of actually deleting these records. Now, what is important to note is that you have a limit in this page of 250 records. Moving on from the mass delete is we want to talk about the mass transfer. The mass transfer is a very similar process as the mass delete. However, you see here that the mass transfer opens it up to much more objects are available to mass transfer. And by mass transfer, we're going to update the ownership. So in this case, we want to look at, let's look at transferring some leads. And this is very similar to the mass delete UI. This allows you to set up criteria based off of field, logic, and values, as well as here's where you would dictate who the information or who the records are transferring from and who they should transfer to. So for example, if I don't put in a user here, but I want them to transfer out to Samwise Gamgee, you see here that they're all owned by myself, but that I want to transfer them out to Samwise. And so what I can do here is I can transfer several of these. Let's say I'm going to transfer all but 3, and I want to transfer them into Samwise's name. And so I'm going to hit transfer here. And now all of these records, these 20 leads, were just transferred. So now remaining are only these 3 leads owned by me. And so now if I go to look in at Samwise's records, he is now going to have all of those 20. So just like that, very similar to the mass delete and being able to narrow down the focus of records that you want to transfer, you set the from user and the to user. Again, there is a limitation of up to 250 records. That is key, just like the mass delete option of limiting 250, same with the mass transfer, you can only do up to 250. And so sometimes if you're doing more than that, if you're doing thousands of records, tens of thousands of records, changing ownership, a common practice is exporting data via reports, updating the owner ID in a CSV, and then importing it back into Salesforce to mass transfer many, many records. But this is a native tool in Salesforce. It is very nice. It's very quick. Just has that limitation of 250 records. Last piece on this bullet point is the recycle bin. The recycle bin is where deleted records go temporarily in order for you to retrieve them in the event that you would like to after 15 days. And that's found here under the app launcher. So if I type in recycle bin, you'll see it down here. And this is where those deleted records will go to live. And so you can have this, you can create a few different list views to see these deleted records. But just to show you what that looks like, I'm going to go in and go ahead and delete a lead here. So we'll delete Betty Bear, right? We will go ahead and remove Betty Bear from the system. And so she will no longer be searchable up here, right? She's no longer existing in Salesforce because I deleted her. So now she's in the recycle bin. So if I go back to the recycle bin here, I'm gonna refresh and we'll see here, there's Betty Bear. And so what I can do here is I can restore records if I would like. I can empty or delete this record. So if I go ahead and select Betty Bear, after that 15-day period, this will no longer be in the recycle bin, but for right now, I can go ahead and restore Betty Bear. And now you see her, she's back in the system. So that's the recycle bin. It keeps that just a temporary copy of these records. In the event that you have deleted, you want to go in and restore them, or you have a suspicion some records are being deleted, you could go and find them in the recycle bin. So it's a great tool to understand what's happening. Why did these records disappear from Salesforce? Check the recycle bin and you'll be able to see them there potentially. Next bullet point is describe the implications and capabilities of data validation tools. We want to talk through different data validation rules, talk about restricted and unrestricted pick lists, and also go through some duplicate and matching rules in this section. And so as we talk about data validation, it's really trying to maintain the integrity of data, whether it is from a user's perspective and how they use Salesforce, or maintaining the integrity of the data as a whole as data is brought into Salesforce and manipulated within Salesforce. So I want to start with data validation rules. Data validation rules are a great tool that you can create on objects, and they're object specific, that allow you to force integrity of data as users work in Salesforce. So what I mean by that is we can build rules that requires certain fields or values to be filled in by reps as they go throughout a process. Very commonly, these are used on opportunities to validate that certain BANT requirements or just requirements are used as opportunities go to close won or close loss or just move down the pipeline. So I'm gonna build one here and just show you what that looks like. So let's go ahead and create a validation rule on the opportunity object. So here I am under the object manager, under the opportunity, and under the validation rules. So let's go ahead and create one. Let's create one that limits us from moving into the discovery stage without a next steps input. So we're gonna call this requirements for discovery. So we'll say need next steps to move into discovery. So we want this formula to equal true. We want it to evaluate as true in order for this error to stop the process. So with that the case, I want to make sure that we have that it is changed the stage. We're going to do an and here. We're going to say that is pick val for the new stage name is discovery. And we're gonna have that the next steps field is blank. I'm not positive on the API name on that, so we're gonna go ahead and grab it here. I know I went through that fairly quick. We have videos on validation rules. We just wanted to create one here to show you what the end result looks like. But this validation rule is looking at with the stage name is updated to discovery without having a next steps field. So we want this to equal true in order for the validation rule to go off. So the error message I want to put is please input the next steps field before moving into discovery. And so I can choose to put this at the top of the page or right on a field. So I'm going to hit save here and make sure that it is active, which it is. And now let's go ahead and test it. So we're going to go on this opportunity here. I'm going to refresh so that Salesforce now knows that this validation rule is active. And what I want to do here is know there's no next step, and I want to try to move into discovery. As I try to do that, here's our error message. Please input the next steps field before moving into discovery. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put in a next steps. I'm just going to put test in there. And now, as I look to move into discovery, it's going to allow me to do so. So that's a validation rule. It requires and tries to maintain the integrity of data within Salesforce, particularly as users experience Salesforce. Next example of data validation are pick lists. We want to talk about a restricted pick list versus an unrestricted pick list. So let's go in quickly to create a pick list on the opportunity here. So I'm under the opportunity. I would like to create just a new pick list field to show you what this looks like. So we're going to go down here to pick list, and we're going to call this one, just for example, we'll call this region's a good one. And so I want to go ahead and enter in here. We're going to say we have east, west, north, and south, okay? And now we see here that we can restrict pick list to the defined values in the value set. And what that means is that we can enforce this even with API pushing in new values. So for example, east, west, north, south, those are the only values that a user in Salesforce can select. Doesn't matter if it's restricted or unselected, unrestricted, users can only select these 4 values. But for example, if we're using a data loader, for example, and we have a value that maybe is northwest, which is not a part of this list, if this is restricted, it will not allow the creation of a new value. But as we see here on this kind of help icon, if it is an unrestricted, meaning it's unrestricted, there's no barriers here, if an API tool such as data loader had a value of region of northeast, if it's unrestricted, it would allow northeast to be created, and then it would even add that to this list of values. So that's the difference between restricted and unrestricted pick lists. Restricted pick lists, regardless of if it's API, it will not allow a new value to be added, which is often what triggers some of these errors when using data loader, data import wizard, is you're using a value outside of a restricted pick list. Unrestricted allows the API to push in a new value. However, the users still can't select outside of these 4 values. So that's restricted and unrestricted pick lists there. Lastly, I want you to be familiar with duplicate rules and matching rules. And now these can get a little bit confusing. I'll try to break this down as simple as possible. But matching rules are the rules that Salesforce has to find matches. To find, oh, these 2 accounts match according to our rules. And duplicate rules dictate what you do, with what Salesforce does when a match is found. So let's jump into see what these look like. I'm going to go into matching rules. And there's standard matching rules that I highly recommend you go through, as well as look to create new rules yourself. But let's just look ourselves at these matching rules. So it's important to note what object the matching rule is on and whether the status is active or not. These are all inactive at the moment. But just to show you what the matching rule is. So this is a standard matching rule. So we're actually going to go to the Salesforce help article that goes through the standard matching rule. So as this loads here, this is the standard account matching rule. And this is going to say, based on these inputs, are these records a match? So we have here matching equation if the account name and billing street is the same, or the account name and the city and state is the same, the account name and zip. This is going to show, okay, these accounts are matches. And that's very helpful for Salesforce to recognize for several things. First is to know and then have the duplicate rule take an action, which we'll look at in a second, as well as you can report on these duplicate accounts in Salesforce. You can see based on reports how many duplicates of a certain object live in the system. So again, first step is matching. Understand, okay, let's tell the system, what do we consider a match? Are we going to use a standard, or are we going to create our own matching rule and have this information here as well? Now, once records are matched, we go into the duplicate rules. And these duplicate rules essentially tell you what happens once you have that matched. So for example, you see here the operations and the actions that are allowed, okay? And this is on the contact here. This is important here, is understanding the action on create. So in this case, it's going to allow that to happen. Action on edit, it's going to allow that to happen. And then on operations, right, you can either alert that a duplicate has happened, as well as you can show it on a report. So I'm going to show you just what options we have here. So for example, on the create, as I mentioned, it's currently being allowed to happen, but I could also block it from being created. So it's going to say, hey, this is a duplicate. You cannot create a duplicate because based on our matching rules, we found a match. So you can block or you can allow. And you can have that text alert come up, as well as you can have these records look at sharing rules to enforce sharing rules or bypass sharing rules. So this is very important. This is where you would set up what happens when there's a match within the system. Are we going to allow it to be created and edited, or are we going to block that action? And then if we do allow it, are we going to send out alerts, or are we going to show them on reports? And so just a great way for you to understand data integrity, particularly with duplicates. You can match them, and then duplicates, you can say to the system, what do we want to do with that? So that's duplicate and matching. What's great about these is that you can have multiple active at once. You can have multiple duplicate rules and multiple matching rules, which allows you to have pretty complex ways of finding matches and taking action on those. Next bullet point is describe the options available when creating or customizing a report or report type. So we're going to get into reports. We're going to show the 4 different types of reports and look at some different report types and maybe build a custom report type as well. So let's go ahead and create a report, and we're going to talk through the 4 types of reports that you can create. So I'm going to go into a new report here, and I'm going to go ahead and just create this just off of a basic object, which in this case, we'll do it on the opportunities object. So what's great right here, I'm going to go ahead and hit view preview automatically just so we can show this, is we want to show what the 4 types of reports are. So right here we have all opportunities in the system. The first report type is a tabular report or a table report, which is exactly what you see here. A table report is simply a table of data that is not being grouped in any way. It can be filtered, it can be sorted ascending, descending, but it is not being grouped. So if I hit run on this, this is simply a tabular report or a table view of a report. You cannot add a chart to a tabular report, as it's just simply a data point, or it's simply a set of data, and Salesforce is not able to group it, so it's not able to create charts. So that is tabular. It is the basic report set. No groupings at all, tabular. Now, if we add one grouping, if we add a grouping on the rows, that's going to create a summary report that allows you to summarize and get different totals and subtotals. So in this case, we are going to group rows by stage. And by doing that, you see here, we now have these stages here, which then allow us to have subtotals and totals here. So if I go ahead and I'm going to now have the amounts, have that sum here, this is a summary report, able to summarize and subtotal. So as I hit run here, you'll see that it's now being grouped by stage and that I have these subtotals. And this is something that I'm able to add charts to. So I can add a chart here. We'll go over in just a moment the types of charts and visualizations you can have, but this is a summary report. First, tabular, no groupings. Second, summary, which has a grouping row. This is being grouped on the left side here. All right, stay with me here. We're going to go into a matrix report, which a matrix report is going to have groupings on the row as well as on the column. So we're going to have 2 different groupings. So you see here, this is a summary report. Now I want to have it by a matrix report. So I'm going to put in the fiscal year and have it grouped by that column, which is then going to create this matrix table here. And this is a matrix report. It's grouped by both rows and grouped by columns. So let's do a quick recap, right? If I have 0 groupings, let me remove these here. 0 groupings is a tabular report, a table essentially. If I have a grouping on just the row, it is a summary report, allowing us to summarize. Now, if I have it grouped by the row and by the column, that is a matrix report. Please go through, play with this, and allow yourself to understand what they look like and what that means from a business perspective of why you would need certain report types. So tabular, summary, and matrix. Now the fourth report format is the joined report, which is just as it sounds. You want to join multiple reports together in different report blocks that allow you to dissect across reports and sometimes often across related objects. That is a joined report. Now how I would do that here on this page is under the report dropdown is I could hit currently report. I want to have a joined report. So I want to hit apply here, and this is where I could actually add a block of reports. So here's where I could add an additional report and create an additional report. So in this case, I'll just put in an accounts report just to show you what that looks like. And this is where I would then be able to see, okay, here is opportunities block and here's the accounts block. So if I look down here, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I'm looking at all accounts here. So we're going to put all-time accounts just to show what the block looks like. Now I have this account report, the opportunity report in the first block, and then I have the account report. So as I hit run here, you're going to see this is the opportunity block, and here's now the account block. So that's what a joined report is, joining those two reports in different blocks, and that's how you would do it is under that report dropdown to then create a joined report. Let's talk report types. Report types defines what object or objects that are related that are really querying Salesforce for records. So this is shown when I go ahead and hit new report is I'm selecting the report type. So here we have, for example, I was looking at an opportunity report or an account report. That is an account report type. It's looking at that object. So you're able to create these custom report types as well, which let's jump in and show how that looks like. So here I am under Salesforce. I'm going to put in report type and go to this report types. So here you can look at what is a custom report. You're going to select a primary object and any secondary objects as you look to create reports. So as I do that, it's going to ask me first, what is my primary object? So I can select here, for example, let's select accounts. Keep it very simple. Actually, let's do that, the contacts only. So just to show the example on the primary, you can create accounts test. I first just want to show how many objects you're able to have in this. So I'm going to store it under the accounts and contacts. You can either have it in development, so it's not visible, or you can have it deployed, so it is visible. So I have the accounts as a primary object. I can then relate a secondary object. Let's do opportunities. And you'll see here, I can have different relationships. I can have each A must have a related B, or A's may or may not have related B. So I can have the opportunities as well as let's put in a contact role. So now that I have opportunities, I have contact roles, and then lastly, let's put in activities. You see here, I'm not able to do additional ones. You're able to have a primary object with 3 related objects. That is the max on a custom report type. So I recommend you get in here, you build a couple custom report types, see what objects relate, and see the options that you have here, right? On seeing how this Venn diagram, how it fills out based on what options you have. But I'm going to go back here, and I just want to create just the contacts report type. So here is contacts. I'm going to call this contacts only. And I'll house under accounts and contacts. but this allows me to look at only contacts. So I don't even want a secondary object. I only want contacts as the primary object. I hit save, and now this report type is available because it is deployed. It's available for me to create reports on. So if I go back to the report builder, I'm going to refresh. And now I'm going to go ahead and hit contacts. And here we have the contacts only custom report type that I'm able to then create that report on. So that is an overview of report types, the standard ones that are currently in Salesforce, and how you can create and the different limitations when you do create a custom report type. Last piece of this bullet, let's talk reporting snapshots. A reporting snapshot allows you to take a figurative snapshot or a picture of data based on certain time periods. So let's say, for example, you're curious on opportunities in the quarter, and you want to know, hey, what happened at the beginning of each month? And because opportunities are constantly changing, if you were to create a standard report, it would be difficult to see the first day of each month, what did my opportunity pipeline look like without a reporting snapshot. Recommend that you build one. You may see a question on this, but really it's just important to know that you need a source report and you need a target object and what that snapshot means. Next bullet point is describe the impact of sharing models on reports. Let's keep this one simple. The sharing model in Salesforce tells the system what records a user can see. For example, if I have opportunities on private, that means that the user is not able to publicly see all opportunities. It's only going to see what they own when they're looking at list views, when they're just searching through Salesforce. The sharing model impacts reports because reports follow the same sharing model. So if I have that private sharing model, what I see on a report may be very different from what someone else sees on a report because it's following the same sharing model. So if you have a user that says, hey, I'm seeing different records on this report as opposed to what you see, you may want to look at the sharing model and understand if that is accurate for the team to have different data showing on different reports, or if that's intended based on the sharing model. Last bullet point is describe the options when creating and modifying dashboards. We have a lot to cover in this one. We're going to cover everything that we can here. So let's start with creating a dashboard. So here I am under the dashboards. I'm going to go ahead and create a new dashboard. We're going to call this the sales dashboard. And we're going to look at several ways we can view a data from an opportunity report that we have created. And so what's important here is talking about folders on dashboards is access, right? So if we live under a private dashboard folder, it's going to be private to only those who have shared this exclusive access to this dashboard. If it's under a public folder, then all will be able to have this dashboard available to them. So I'll put it under a public. And so here's a dashboard. I want to create a dashboard and show you what you can add to a dashboard, how you can move this around, and what chart types we have available. So I want to add a component here. And as I do that, I can go and I can bring a report onto this dashboard. So I have this opportunity report. As I hit that, we now have all of these options of different chart types or to display it as. So we have bar charts. We have stacked bar charts if we have multiple groupings. We have a line chart, pie chart, just the number, a gauge. Don't ask me why, but Salesforce always has a question about gauges. So understand what a meter or an odometer, like a car, looks like. We have the funnel, scatter plot, table, etc. So we're able to here select this bar chart. This is currently looking at stages. We want to know how much money is in each stage. So instead of record count, we may want to have it by the amount. And here is where we can have it sorted by. We can change the name. So change name here. I can put a subtitle here, test subtitle, as well as we can have different themes. I can have a dark theme. I can have a light theme. So know the different chart types. So we have, as I mentioned, those bar charts, stack bar charts, line, donut, just the metric, gauge, funnel, scatter plot, and table. Go through this, very simple to just create a report, look at what all of these look like. Here, the preview window here, and understand how this would look and in what scenarios, which chart would maybe be beneficial. So you want that visual aspect here. So I'm gonna go ahead and add this component. So here I have my component. I can move this around, wherever I would like. And really it's important to note the smallest I can make it is a 1x1 square, right? I have the ability to move this across all of these and fill up the grid. What's important to note is that each dashboard has a limit of 20 components. You cannot have more than 20 components to a dashboard. Now let's talk about a few features of this dashboard that I've created that I have a report on. If I go here under the setup cog under the dashboard, we want to talk about the running user and then a few other options here, but the running user means who is this dashboard being viewed as. The default is to run it as whoever created the dashboard. So in this case, it would be me. So as all users come to see this dashboard, it would be run as Ryan. But we can create dynamic dashboards by having it run as another person. So I can default it to be someone else, as well as I can have it written by the viewer of the dashboard. So whatever that user has access to, whatever that sharing model is, whoever they are viewing the dashboard, they will only see the data that they have available. Just as I mentioned that reports go off of the sharing model, dashboard is going to look at the same reports, just visualizing it there. I can also have viewers choose who to view the dashboard as. So again, this allows that dynamic dashboard. When I say dynamic, it means it can change who it's being viewed as, who the data is appearing based on the sharing model. Now, a few fun things here is you can change the grid size. You can have it by 12 columns or 9. You can also change the color palette of the charts here. Next piece I want to talk about are dashboard filters. The dashboard filters are able to filter certain fields and values across the same object. So if I have this dashboard that has just opportunity reports on it, I can look at opportunities that maybe are looking across different age, bands. So that's a dashboard filter that you can create to dynamically alter the reports on the dashboard at once. The last part I want to talk about here is subscribing to dashboards. You can subscribe to dashboard, which means that you can receive this information via email based on a different frequency. So here I am under the dashboards, and I want to go ahead and subscribe someone to a dashboard. And so I go under here, and I can go under the subscribe button here. And what's great is to know the frequency that you can receive these dashboards. You can receive it daily, weekly, and monthly. And you can receive this by email that you have here. It is dependent. The only subscribers on a dashboard have to have access to the dashboard. So it needs to be on a public dashboard, in a public dashboard folder, or that they have access to the dashboard folder. And so again, daily, weekly, monthly, you can receive dashboards emailed to you. Now those filters that I set up on the dashboard, those will not come through under a subscribed dashboard. So when they receive this email, they won't have those dashboard filters in place. It'll just be the plain dashboard. You can also edit these recipients. You can do it by users, by roles, and by public groups. You can subscribe these dashboards. Now the limit here is that one person can only be subscribed to 5 dashboards. And the last limitation is that you cannot be subscribed to a dynamic dashboard. So as you saw me updating the running user and being able to change the running user, that cannot be subscribed because really that wouldn't translate into an email of a dashboard. So you cannot be subscribed to a dynamic dashboard. So that covers it for the data and analytics management portion of this exam. Again, 14%. Make sure that you walk through this information in a developer org, that you poke around, that you can see how these things influence your data, see how you can visualize this data. Let me know if you have any additional questions, and look forward to seeing you on the last section of this exam prep series. Thanks.